crostini, tapas, bruschetta, open-faced mini sandwiches, whatever you want to call them. I'm going to repurpose some dried crusty bread, top it with some goodness right here on Savoring Our Faith here on EWTN. The most traditional way people would call these three recipes would be crostini with some toppings on it, but we know that there are different ways you can call a little open-faced sandwich. And I'm going to be making for you three little crostini with three unique toppings. One is going to be a traditional bruschetta, which is a tomato, basil, olive oil infusion, and it's going to bring you back to the good old days in Italy. The second one I'm going to do is going to be a little bit more of a modern flair with some sweet and some savory with a tapenade of sorts with some white beans, some caramelized onions, and a little bit of goat cheese on top. Absolutely fantastic. And the third is going to be these little fried balls of bread. And we're going to season them up so that every bite is going to make your mouth want some more. So let's get started. And I've got actually a whole bunch of this Italian loaf bread, and it's about a day old, so it's a little bit more crusty. And I'm cutting it on a slight bias so that we can get it a little bit on an angle, so to speak. And what we're going to do is we're going to heat up our grill pan just a little bit so that we can get these grilling. And however, before we put that all on the grill pan, what I've got to do is kind of layer them all out. I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil on top of it, put it all on here, develop some nice grill marks, put it off to the side, and then we're going to finish up with the toppings. All right, so I've got the crostini lined up. I'm going to pay attention to it so that it doesn't burn. And if we get some grill marks, great. If not, don't worry about it. It's still going to taste really good because the toppings are going to cover up the lack of grill marks anyway. But you still want to pay attention to it because you don't want to overcook it, and you certainly don't want it to burn. But while this is all cooking and I've got it on a low heat, I've got some onions that have been caramelizing for a really good long while, maybe even about 30, 40 minutes. And all I did was put these cut up onions in rings in some olive oil and just let it cook over really, really low heat. And at one point I got a little impatient and I turned the heat up, and that's why you see a little bit of the more darker versions there. But it's still going to taste pretty good. What I'm going to do now is take some just regular buttermilk biscuits that come out of these things, and I've got to open these up. I haven't used one of these in a while, so I want to make sure I open this up. We're going to cut them up, season them, and deep fry them. Can't get any better than that. All right, so I just simply open that canister up. I've got these quartered. This has a little bit of some corn in it too, so it's going to make for a nice little sweet bite to it, and it's going to go great with an accompanying sauce, and we're going to season these up. I'll show you in just a minute. But I've got my oil heated up pretty nicely. I'm just going to add these to it, never overcrowding the pan, but just making sure that I pay attention to this as well, because even though everything's better deep fried, you can also make it really bad for you by letting it soak a little too long in the oil and making it burn. But you'll see how they just start to puff up. You know what? I got a shallow pan here with maybe about a quart of just regular oil, and we'll wait till this turns golden brown. And while this is going on, let me check to make sure that my crostini, they're perfect. Turn that off. I'm going to flip them all over and just allow them to warm up on each side. While this is going on, I've got my onions again, just deglazing it with a little bit of red wine vinegar to kind of help not only make it tart to complement the sweetness, but also to help make sure that we can clean the pan up a little bit more easily. See, like that? It'll be able to clean up at the same time. Now, next is to season up the bread. And how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to put in a whole bunch of different ingredients, but wait, I got to make sure that I don't burn these. So easy flip on each one of these things before I put the seasoning all together. And as easy it was to put in there, you see just how quick it is to cook these things, making sure that we turn all of them over so that they're all going to be nice and golden brown on each side. And again, this is basically done. So what I've got to do, so it doesn't burn, I'm going to turn the heat down, continue to flip it around to make sure that it's as even and brown and golden in color on both sides, as I now kind of create the little bit of a nice little blend here of some dried ingredients, some oregano, some sage spice. We've got some rosemary. We've got a little bit of thyme as well. We've got some crushed red pepper flakes here. And then we've also got just a nice little spice blend. And you can use whatever you have in the refrigerator, but I'm also going to top this off with some Parmesan cheese. Let this kind of come together. And now it's time to scoop all of these bad boys up. Let the hot oil serve as kind of like an adherent to it all. It'll kind of allow these herbs to stick together, and it's time to just get this simple bread all seasoned up. We're gonna be making a simple dipping sauce with this as well. But now that these are done, into this seasoned mix it goes. We're gonna give this a little toss. My gosh, talk about like bite-sized food. And I think bite-sized food is very similar to what we experience in the scriptures and even at Mass. You know, we call the Mass basically a feast for the soul, but there's so much truth in it that the priest has to break it down only in a 10-minute homily, and we only have 1 hour, so to speak, of a liturgy. If we really understood the power of the liturgy, we would realize that we'd have to pace ourselves, because we can't handle a smorgasbord every day. We almost have to kind of treat our faith, I don't want to say bite-sized by reducing it, but isn't that what Jesus did? He didn't teach the truth all in one point of his life. And when he did, it was all made into one bite-sized piece, and it's called the Eucharist. And it's going to take not just one meal, but a continued effort on the part of the church to feed her children. And you can't force feed like a whole bunch of food in a kid's face or stuff it all in their mouth at one time. You almost have to, as a gentle mom and dad, give bite-sized nuggets. And this bite-sized nugget is definitely going to make you say, thank you, Jesus. Oftentimes when we come to Mass, the priest and the other ministers who are part of that liturgical celebration have a responsibility, especially the priest in the homily, to not reduce the faith to an 8 to 10, maybe 12-minute homily, but he has the responsibility of taking the eternal truths and packaging it in a way so that it fits in our sometimes closed-minded brains. It can fit into our unexpanded souls, and it can also fit into the hardness of our hearts. So think about the fact that a priest has great responsibility to make sure that faith is made bite-sized. They can fit not only in the palm of your hands, but fit into our mouths so that we can, in a sense, chew on the eternal truths and savor the faith. So now that we've got this set off to the side, I'm just going to put that all out. I'm going to now create the topping for the bruschetta, the traditional bruschetta. And this bruschetta is going to be, like I said, the very typical olive oil infused with basil, as well as some tomatoes, salt, pepper. And then I'm also going to now start up with rehydrating, or at least warming up, this beautiful white beans here. So let's get our ingredients together. Put this hot oil off to the side. Since this is a nice hard countertop, we don't have to worry too much about it. I'm gonna heat up the beans just ever so slightly in this little cool pan, and I'm just gonna warm it up slowly. Great. You know, again, when we talk about our faith, it is very easy to want to have it all at the same time. And you kind of can't. Just going to give this a little rinse. What we've got to do is realize that God speaks to us in moments. And these little moments, so to speak, allow us to experience God in His fullness a little at a time. In other words, God allows us to experience Him in these very simple moments that have amazing, profound meaning. Kind of like these crostini here will be just bite-sized, but at the same time, it is going to be so full of goodness, it kind of requires you to, oh, one got a little burn, that's all right. We'll just cover that up. Actually, this is an easy thing to do. If anything like that ever happens, super simple. Just scrape it away. But you don't want that because a bite full of like the bitterness of that burn, not going to be tasty. All right? We're going to just chop these down. We're going to break them out into cubes, put it in there, and then we're going to chiffonade some of this basil, smear out some garlic, hit it with olive oil, salt, pepper, some squeeze of lemon, including the zest. All right, so what I've got going right now is I've just chopped up my tomatoes, diced them up as evenly as possible. Turn this down a little bit just so that the beans are going to be soft enough and warm enough so that they smear easy. Now I'm just gonna zest a little bit of this lemon, and then I'm also gonna squeeze some of the lemon juice in it, season it a little aggressively with this salt and pepper, add some olive oil to it, and then I'm gonna let the salt do its magic, namely bring out the juices of the tomato. However, when we serve this, we're gonna make sure that we strain some of the juice out so that the bread doesn't get all soggy. Remember, we're making crostinis, which means that they have to be crusty. And what I'm trying to do is complement old bread by giving it kind of new purpose, but at the same time, making sure that it is not just old and crusty and hard, but it's gonna have some deliciousness based on whatever we top it with. So a little bit of salt. And again, that might seem like a lot. Don't you worry. It's not going, you're not eating like a handful of it. And most of it is going to become liquid from the juices of the ingredients here. And now the olive oil. And we're just gonna let this now sit. This will be the topping. It makes for a super easy, fun, delicious way to eat a meal, one bite at a time. Kind of similar to the way we are at Mass. The fullness of truth, one bite at a time. All right, so what we've got, the crostini up. This is definitely warm. I want to make a little bit of a dipping sauce for these delicious bite sizes of, I've got to eat one. I've got to do it because I'm so hungry right now. God bless the snack even. You know, I think about the kids at Fatima. They were just eating an apple or a small midday snack, and they still prayed grace before that meal, huh? Do this. Regular tomato sauce. Threw in a nice 5-spice of, not 5-spice, but just basically some Italian herbs. Season it up with a little bit of salt. That is so good. And pepper. And I'm also gonna add a little bit of olive oil to it as well. Just to kind of bring about a fruity flavor to it. Let that simmer and cook. Now it's time to complete the process by taking some of my caramelized onions. I'm gonna open up this like a Belchev cheese, which is gonna be a type of goat cheese that's gonna be nice and soft. What I'm gonna do actually though is put it here. I'm gonna mix a little bit with some of the leaves of this thyme, all right? And you'll see what I'm gonna do is basically create, I don't wanna say like a compound butter, but it'd be like more of anything, a compound cheese. And I'm just adding some flavor to the cheese itself and just using some of the herbs here from this thyme. Careful not to get any stems because you don't wanna get even a bite size of that. That's not gonna be good to eat. If you wanted to, you could even mince this up a little bit more, but I think this is definitely fine enough. All right, so Continue this down, and then you're gonna see what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just take some of this cheese, I'm gonna mix it all in there, we're gonna top it off on some of this crostini, and we are going to have ourselves some bite-sized feasting. Let's give this a little stir. You're gonna see how we're gonna assemble all of this together. As a matter of fact, to make it even easier for myself, let me use this little bowl here. And I'm gonna just take some of this cheese, again, because it's so soft. It is just so soft. I'm just gonna squeeze out a little bit, and I'm gonna just mix it all together. Getting a little fork here. Just mixing it all up. You can see how beautiful this cheese is going to be infused with some of these, this fresh herb. All right, so what I'm gonna do is just assemble one of the crostini with the beans, as well as the caramelized onions, and then this flavored goat cheese. So here, let's just take a crostini. This is going to now be soft enough to mix all together, but to keep it easy, you'll just see just how soft it is. You can just spread it out with your spoon. If you put this in a bowl and kind of mix it all around, you'll see just how it turns almost into like a spread. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take some time, mash all of these beans down, turn it basically into a little bit of a spread for this crostini. One bean almost got away. Top that off with just a little bit of this herb goat cheese. Oh my gosh, every bite is going to be so flavorful. You'll have kind of the creaminess of the beans, the creaminess of the cheese, but at the same time, this bright burst of flavor from the herbs, and then we're gonna have some bold, intense sweetness, earthy sweetness from a caramelized onion. Just a little topping on it because it goes a very long way. And then with that, that is absolutely beautiful. And if you want, you can even put just a little bit more fresh herbs right on top. Next, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to assemble a bruschetta, and it's gonna come from basically these traditional tomato slices. Let's get a new spoon going here. And this can't get any easier. You've got this sitting in the refrigerator, and you let all of the salt pull out the juices. You take a piece of this bread right here, and you gotta make sure that you strain the juices because you don't want this to turn soggy. It'll only be difficult to eat. It'll make the texture just kind of strange. So from here, just simply top that all off, and then obviously when we plate it all together, we could make some beautiful little designs with some of the basil, as well as some lemons on the side for the plating as well, which we'll do in just a second. However, the one thing that I know you're also going to enjoy very much is this fresh, repurposed dough, and we've got a dipping sauce, and when we put it all together, you're going to see how even just bite-sized food goes a long way. In the same way, that little bite you receive at the Eucharist can take you to eternal life. Tapas and crostinis are just simple pieces of bread, just like the Eucharist. But what goes on top of it is what makes it very special. In the same way with the Eucharist, what goes on top of it, rather what goes inside of it. And that is, it's infused with grace. And so like the tapas, which is going to be infused with flavor, every bite of the Eucharist is certainly infused with God's grace. All right. What I tried to do is put some plating together for you all. I'm going to actually do some decorations with that, but also show you what we're doing with these little mini bites. And I think it would be a lot of fun if you just simply put a little bit of the sauce in the middle. People walk up and take it. And in the sauce, again, you can't get any simpler than this. We just simply took some regular tomato sauce, heated it up. We put in some dried herbs, salt, pepper, some garlic powder, and also a little bit of olive oil. Just heat it up. Again, it's a very simple dish, but it can go a long way because it has so many bold flavors to it. And if you want, you can even thicken it up with a little bit of sour cream to give a little bit of mellowness to it all. So to plate this, I would put this right in the middle. This is the one I'm going to eat a little bit later. And you just simply take some of these fried balls, again, just making sure that they're all seasoned well. The hot oil allows the herbs to stick to these, and you're just simply going to layer these all around, and then we're gonna do some plating designs. You know, sometimes meals can get so heavy. There are times when I go to restaurants and I will just order like 4 or 5 things from the appetizer, because that's just a real nice way to get a whole bunch of different flavors without filling yourself up with the same one piece of meat, chicken, or fish. Now, don't get me wrong, I like that, but sometimes we need just to sample some things. And in our faith, one of the beautiful things about our faith is that we have a treasury of spirituality, because if you want to, you can develop a devotion to Mary, and there are a whole bunch of prayers, even some super quick ones that are almost like bite-sized nuggets of maternal truth. And then if you want, you could also say a Divine Mercy chaplet. Regardless, you can see how we don't try to force just one thing down anybody. We want to make sure that they have a great, how shall I say, experience of bite-sized nuggets of truth. Now let's do some decorating with all of these, because the decor will certainly help us whet our appetites, and these little bite sizes only prepare us for the greater feast. Tapas are a universal food, because no matter where you go in the world, there's always bread. And there's always going to be something people put into it. This, however, is going to show the universality of our faith, because with a tapas, with these crostini, it shows that we do have something in common. Bread and goodness that you put on top. So the next time you eat some tapas, just remember the internationality and the universality of our faith. So I think what I'm going to do for the decor here, because even though it's bite-sized and it'll go very quickly, I think people feast with their eyes. I'm just going to do a nice little chiffonade of basil, and it'll be basically taking some fresh basil leaves, putting them and wrapping them up all together, kind of like a nice little bundle, and then you're going to run your knife through it in one kind of like fashion, not going down, but gliding all the way across, making sure that you don't, put your finger in all of that as well. And this is going to create nice little ribbons. And one thing awesome about fresh herbs is that even though you only have a little bit of it, it goes such a long way, such a long way. And so what we're going to do is just kind of drizzle this right on top, kind of like confetti over top of the basil. And I'm also going to just make some nice thin, super thin slices of lemon as well, just to put around it, because this little tart flavor, oh gosh, it again brings out some nice freshness to something that was once crusty old bread, right? But with this, it also serves as a nice little plating design as well. So just putting this just across in different places, and then we're just going to simply allow the chiffonades of basil just to kind of be drizzled all the way around. And it not only serves as a decoration, it actually makes it rather beautiful. And I know that the Italians love to drizzle olive oil on everything at the last minute to give a little bit of sheen. And so what we're going to do, just a little drizzle right on top. For the crostini here, that has a little bit of a mash of the white beans that have been kind of warmed up, as well as some flavored goat cheese with a caramelized onion. Here's what we want to do, is keep this very simple. Again, using just a little bit of the thyme, just kind of sprinkle it right on top. And these little flecks of green, not only again will add a lot of flavor, it makes the plate rather beautiful. And then to keep it even, to keep that theme going, what we're going to do is we're going to garnish the plate with a couple little leaves of the thyme as well in different places. Now you can imagine that at a party, at a dinner party, and if you had a whole bunch of these kind of laid out, this is kind of like the best of finger foods, where you can have a lot of flavor all in one little bite size. And that's kind of true once again in regards to our faith. We have to see that we can't take it all in. We are very limited human beings, and if there's anything that we need to do more of and taking in, is obviously more listening and less talking. I remember my spiritual director telling me, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth for obvious reasons. We need to listen more, and bite-sized listening. You know, on the radio, just listening to better things, listening to better, good instructional, informational tidbits on the radio rather than just the gossip, and then using our mouth less. Not to keep putting things out of our mouth, but putting good bite-sized things into it. And these recipes will definitely fill you up. So we'll see you next time on Savoring Our Faith here on EWTN.